I share a home with my older sister. We rent it and divide the bills. This happened last October when the weather was starting to turn colder. My sister was planning to visit some friends in Florida, so she would be gone for nearly a week. She asked me to join her, but I couldn't take time off work. So, she left on Monday morning, which happened to be a day off for me. I spent the day cleaning and just enjoying the peace of being alone. But later that same day, around 2 in the afternoon, someone knocked on the door. I assumed it might be a package my sister had ordered, so I opened it. Standing there was an older man, probably in his early 40s, and he wasn't holding anything. "Can I help you?" I asked. He looked at me for a long, unsettling moment before responding, "Oh, I just wanted to see who lives here. Sorry, I didn't mean to bother you." He smiled, nodded, and then walked away. I thought it was strange but didn't think much more of it. After that, the rest of the evening went by normally. The next day, I had work, so I woke up early and headed out. When I returned home at 6 p.m., I had only been back for about half an hour when there was another knock at the door. I looked through the peephole before opening it. It was the same man from the previous day, wearing the same clothes. This time, I hesitated a bit before cracking the door open. "Is everything okay?" I asked. He smiled and reassured me, "Of course, everything's fine," as if I was being paranoid. Then he said he was just checking in on me. The way he said it made it sound like he had an expectation to be here. I asked, "Are you a neighbor of mine?" "I don't recognize you," he replied. "No, I wish. Just walking around." By now, he was starting to creep me out, so I quickly told him I was fine and shut the door. I texted my sister that night to ask if she'd ever seen this man, but she told me I was overreacting. Despite locking all the doors and feeling somewhat safe, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The following day passed uneventfully, and the man didn't come back. I tried to convince myself I had nothing to worry about. On my day off, just before my sister was due to come back, I spent most of the day inside, reading and watching YouTube. Every once in a while, I'd check out the windows, but I didn't see anything unusual. Around 8 p.m., I was watching TV when I heard a noise outside, like something scraping against the side of the house. I rushed to the window and saw the bush shaking, then heard footsteps running away. I could barely make out anything in the darkness, but I had a terrible feeling. Was it the same man? How long had he been there? Feeling nauseous, I decided to call my sister. Luckily, she picked up. I tried to explain what was happening, but I was speaking too fast. Right then, I heard a knock at the door. I didn't answer, but the man started calling out, knocking harder. He said he was injured and tried to guilt-trip me. He apologized for disturbing me and begged me to let him in. He was persistent and desperate, and it was all starting to feel wrong. I felt so uncomfortable, so I quickly called 911, as my sister advised. The man kept knocking for about 5 minutes before finally leaving. To this day, I still don't know what the man wanted. It felt like he knew my sister was away for the week, but how could he have known that? I haven't seen him since, and I hope it's over, but part of me still wonders if he's been watching me all along. One night, just after 2 a.m., I had come home from a New Year's celebration. I wasn't completely drunk, but I had definitely had a few too many drinks. I had a headache and was exhausted, so I just dropped everything on the floor and collapsed on the couch. I wasn't able to sleep because of the headache, but I closed my eyes for a while. Then, I heard the doorbell ringing repeatedly. I didn't even bother getting up to check who it was. At the time, I was just too tired and didn't care. Eventually, the doorbell stopped, and I managed to fall asleep. When I woke up, I felt groggy and weak, still with a pounding headache. The house was dark, and I stood up to go get some water. As I walked down the hallway, I noticed a streak of light on the wall. The front door was slightly open, and moonlight was coming through. I was confused. Had I really been so drunk that I forgot to close the door? Before I could make it to the front door, I heard footsteps upstairs. I froze in fear, ducked behind the couch, and listened as two people moved around upstairs. They were walking around casually, as if they thought the house was empty. My heart was racing in my chest as I listened to them move around the house, opening drawers, and taking things. They eventually made their way into the living room. The way the couch was set up, I was somewhat hidden behind it, but if they got too close, they'd definitely see me. I held my breath and stayed motionless as they rummaged through the house. One of the men walked closer and closer to where I was hiding, and at one point, I saw his head peek over the couch. Fortunately, He didn't see me. They eventually left the house, but I was terrified. It turned out that I had forgotten to lock the front door, and the men likely assumed I wasn't home since my car wasn't in the driveway. A neighbor mentioned seeing them watching my house a few times over the past week. Fortunately, they only intended to rob me, but if they had found me, who knows what could have happened. Another time, I was home alone with my dog, Hazel. It was a quiet evening, and after I let her outside to do her business, she began barking at something by the back fence. I thought she was just barking at a squirrel or something, but after a while, she wouldn't stop. When I checked on her, I saw her barking at something on the other side of the fence. I called her back inside and didn't think much more of it. Later, when we went to bed, I left the bedroom door slightly open, as I usually do. But when I woke up in the middle of the night, I noticed that the door was wide open. Hazel wasn't in the room, and she didn't come when I called her. I was starting to feel uneasy. I got out of bed, and as I went downstairs, I saw that Hazel's bowls were still full, but there was no sign of her. I checked the kitchen and froze when I saw her crouched under the table, terrified and shaking. Something was definitely wrong. I looked around and noticed the back door was open. I rushed outside with Hazel and ran to a neighbor's house to call the police. When the officers arrived and searched the house, they didn't find anyone, but they did find signs of shoe prints inside. It left me with many questions, and I still don't know who was in my house or what they intended to do. All I know is that I was lucky I wasn't there when they came in.